Come closer, friend. The night is thick and the wind has a bite to it, but the fire is warm and the woods, for now, keep their distance. Take a seat. There's room enough for one more. Out here beneath these ancient trees, stories cling to shadows like mist. Some are meant to be warnings. Some are just meant to keep you company till dawn. Rest your legs. Feel the heat in your hands and listen close. For in these wild places, the line between myth and memory is thinner than you think. Let me tell you a story I heard not long ago. A story of 4 friends and one last weekend in the Scottish wilds. If you've got the nerve, I promise, you'll remember it the next time you hear something move in the dark. They say the Scottish wilderness keeps secrets. 4 friends, Mason, Billy, Jamie and Lewis, decided to spend their last summer together in a patch of forest that felt untouched by time. They arrived late in the afternoon, laughter echoing under the canopy as they set up their tents. The air was thick with pine and a sense that this was their last adventure before the world changed. While searching for firewood, they stumbled onto something the forest tried to hide. An abandoned stone cottage, shrouded in mist and twisted vines, barely visible even a few steps away. It looked like the woods had tried to swallow it whole. They joked about witches and ghosts, but the nervous edge in their voices betrayed them. They agreed to wait until after dinner, when the fire was roaring and their nerves were dampened by food and bravado. As dusk surrendered to night, they circled the fire and swapped scary stories, each one darker than the last. The shadows around them seemed to lean in, listening. Eventually, the dare became inevitable. They grabbed torches and made for the cottage. Lewis found a gap in the tangled brush at the rear. Squeezing through, they discovered the cottage was much larger than it first appeared, as if it had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The stone was slick with moss, and the windows were black holes. They circled the place, hearts pounding, and found a warped door that groaned open at their touch. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Glass crunched underfoot. The rooms were choked with dust and the scent of something long dead. Jamie's torchlight landed on a door, half rotted but still locked. With a shove, it creaked open, revealing a staircase spiralling down into the blackness. The basement was a warren of stone corridors and low ceilings. Their voices echoed strangely, as if the walls didn't want them there. Billy, always the practical one, marked the route with glowing lines of ooze from a cracked glow stick. The green light flickered against the stone, but it was quickly swallowed by the darkness. Deeper in, they found a cavernous space. The air was icy. The walls were carved with symbols none of them recognised. Ancient, looping, angry shapes that seemed to crawl when you weren't looking. Torches still hung in brackets, some with old, blackened wicks. One corner held a table draped in a cloth embroidered with more symbols. Gold goblets and plates arranged as if waiting for a feast. In the opposite corner, a hulking wooden cabinet, locked tight, squatted in the shadows. The boys' bravado cracked. Jamie said they needed to leave, and for once, no one argued. That's when the chanting began, low at first, rising and falling, echoing through the tunnels. It wasn't English. It wasn't anything they'd ever heard. It sounded old and hungry. They froze. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Lewis whispered, "How do we get out?" Panic set in. Billy found a door near the cabaret, but it was bolted from the other side. Jamie hissed that he could see torchlight flickering down the tunnel. Mason, desperate, remembered a tapestry he'd seen fluttering in a draught. He ripped it back and found a narrow, hidden passage. They crowded into the tunnel, hearts thundering. The chanting grew louder behind them, joined by the shuffle of feet and the scrape of something heavy dragging across stone. Jamie looked back and saw figures, tall, cloaked, faces lost in shadow, moving in rhythm with the chant. The tunnel was worse than the basement. The darkness felt alive, pressing in on all sides. Then, ahead, something moved. A wet, ragged breathing, too big to belong to a human, echoed toward them. They snapped off their torches and clung to the walls, praying to be invisible. The air was thick with the stink of rot and old earth. The noise grew closer, a shuffling, scraping, dragging sound. The boys broke, spinning and racing back the way they'd come. They burst into the main chamber, lungs burning, only to find they weren't alone. Cloaked figures filled the room, chanting louder, the sound battering their skulls. The boys tried to scream, but it was drowned out. The light from the tunnel poured in, and with it came a shape. Enormous, twisted, crawling with shadows. It filled the doorway, blotting out the glow of the passage. The chanting reached a fever pitch, then stopped all at once. The chanting stopped so suddenly, it felt like the world itself had been muted. For a moment, the only sound was their own ragged breathing and the thunder of their hearts. The boys' eyes darted around the chamber. Each cloaked figure had turned to face them, their hoods impossibly dark, faces swallowed by a shadow. Then a voice, not one of the boys, whispered from somewhere behind them. It was cold and ancient, a sound that slithered into their ears and coiled around their thoughts. The figures began to move, parting slowly to form a narrow path that led deeper into the darkness. The boys wanted to run, but their legs refused to work. It was as if the very air had thickened, rooting them in place. From the tunnel, the monstrous shape emerged, its limbs too long, joints bending the wrong way, eyes burning with a sickly, golden light. The thing dragged itself forward, leaving a trail of black ichor that hissed and steamed where it touched the stone. As it drew closer, the boys' flashlights flickered violently, then died, plunging everything into a suffocating gloom. The creature let out a groan that wasn't quite human, and suddenly the chanting resumed. But now it was inside their heads. Each syllable seemed to scrape against their bones, filling them with a terror so complete it wiped away everything else. One by one, the boys began to lose track of who they were. Mason tried to call out to Billy, but the name slipped from his memory, like water through his fingers. Jamie reached for Lewis, but the distance between them grew impossibly vast, as if the chamber itself was stretching, warping. The last thing any of them saw was that monstrous figure reaching out, shadows spilling from its hands, swallowing them whole. When the search teams finally found the cottage weeks later, there was no sign of the boys. The only evidence they'd ever been there was a series of glowing marks along the walls. Strange symbols, pulsing faintly in the dark, and a single phone left at the entrance. On it, a voice memo played on loop, the same guttural chant, over and over, in a language no one could recognise. And sometimes, when the wind is right, locals say you can still hear those voices, caught somewhere between this world and whatever lurks beneath the earth, calling out for help that will never come.